Hello and welcome back to MPE 2023. I'm Hannah Wallace, and kindly joining me now in the studio is Olaf Weerfeldt from Trustly.
Thanks for having me.
Olaf, thank you very much for taking the time out of the busy event to come and join us.
Thank you.
So we're primarily talking about open banking payments, and I'm interested to hear how far have we actually come with regards to technology adoption. So let's start there.
Interesting question. So when it comes to the technology adoption of open banking, I think you kind of need to structure that answer in a few different components. So to have like a well-working open banking payment solution, you basically need I would say three components. So you need to have the infrastructure provided by the banks in form of APIs now as mandated by PSD2. Second, you need to have a good user experience, so you need to have kind of availability of digital customer authentication methods. And then thirdly, you kind of need to have the user adoption there, because people need to kind of go through a bit of a change, and we're all creatures of habit, right? So when it comes to the adoption, I would say that the first two components are really there in a lot of countries, not everywhere. It differs, greatly. So if you take sort of the Nordic and Baltic regions, open banking is actually already today quite widely used. You have countries like Netherlands, which is dominated by Ideal, which is essentially an open banking payment method. But then if you look more towards Southern Europe, it's not really there yet. I think a very interesting market is the UK, where we see a really sort of strong take-up recently, only the last 12 months or so, of open banking payment. So I think it's like the third component that's there. And I think also we see certain merchants having the ability to themselves work with their payment mix and drive the adoption. So yes, technology is there, it's not everywhere, and consumer adoption is again getting there.
All right, well, thank you very much for setting the scene there across Europe. And when considering the adoption of open banking payments then compared to technology like contactless payments, do you think that the adoption curve is the same between the two, or is open banking way ahead of contactless?
So the short answer would be no, but to nuance that a little bit more, I think open banking is a very different sort of technology shift than, let's say, contactless. So where you have contactless being basically just a technology upgrade, in my mind at least, on card and how you pay with the card. It still sort of relies on the same fundamentals as sort of the card schemes, right?
Yeah.
Whereas open banking, it's quite a big shift in how you pay, right? And I also think that a lot of people are talking about open banking is equating it to bank APIs. Whereas providers such as Trustly, such as ourselves, we are building something more. So we are building on the open banking technology, but we're actually building a full end-to-end payment solution, right? So sometimes I make the analogy that if you think open banking is the internet, we are building the Google, right? So a bunch of services that are connected won't actually make it into something that's useful for a consumer. You also need some, the search engine or the payment provider that can leverage this stuff.
Sure.
So naturally, that technology adoption takes longer. Than something that is contactless, which basically is swapping out the technology, right? And when the cards churn, you just get the new ones issued.
All right, a helpful comparison there, and interesting to hear what Trustly is doing in that space. So taking all of that into account then, do you think we're going to see more consolidation then as the early adopters, but also the innovators, let's face it, overtaken by the larger players?
Yes. No, I mean, yes, I think that consolidation in payments is a theme that is going on. It's been kind of ebb and flow for the last few years, I think. I think what we see now when open banking is really, like we've been talking about open banking for a while, but now when we see that it start picking up and merchants say, hey, I can really use this, it works really well. You see acquisitions like Visa buying Think, just to kind of safeguard, like, okay, we need to be here as well. So I think, yes, there will be consolidation, but probably more actually from sort of incumbents that want to add this technology to their own kind of portfolio, as opposed to necessarily, open banking providers themselves joining. You will have some of that too as well. I mean, we ourselves recently acquired EcoSpan, which is a UK company, for example. So for sure, there is that going on as well. In terms of, like, ultimately payments is a scale game, right? Everybody knows that. So the bigger you are, the more you can win.
Sure, all right, hear you loud and clear, scale game. And any use cases you could share with us before we end?
I think, as I kind of touched on before, some of the most interesting use cases, in particular sort of in the e-commerce space, is where you have merchants that realize that, actually consumers don't necessarily come to my site to pay. I'm not trying to wow them with my payments that I provide, right? I'm trying to wow them with my product. But actually working actively with my payment mix, I can, without losing anything on the top line, I can actually improve my operational efficiency. So for example, we've seen in the fashion vertical that return rates go down when people pay with debit, which is kind of logical in a way. So I think those use cases where you have merchants that themselves think, okay, hey, how can I actually use this technology that providers such as Trustly is, allowing me to access, and then help drive that adoption, with their own user base. I think that's really interesting. And then of course there are other special cases, we do instant payouts, for example. You have marketplaces that have two sides where they need to pay, a contributor to the marketplace as well as a buyer. So there are some niche cases like that where it carries a lot of value.
All right, well, thank you very much for sharing those examples and your insights. I think some good advice weaved in there as well.
Yep.
But I'll let you get back to the event, but thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Lovely to be here.